Yeah. Yeah. But I got, regular. You like and subscribe. But I remember, Josh, let's make some. Jump up very high. Oh God. Fuck!
The plan to take out Luciano before Luciano could take out the new boss of all bosses. But a traitor tipped off Lucky about the plot to kill him.
Once Lucky learned that he was on Maranzano's hit list, he drove
1931, above Grand Central Station.
What's
which was
Yeah.
also a
Well, I'm pissed
criminal
off. I'm really pissed.
Maranzano knew that
Oh,
if
my
they
God,
started
so
using
this-
tax laws to
Oh,
go after
so
gangsters and feared
so
trouble from the Internal Revenue Service.
Maranzano
I'm gonna
instructed
go to
his
the
bodyguards
couple
in
of
his
hours,
office not to be armed. In case these agents from the IRS showed up, he didn't want any trouble.
Sure enough, at 2 p.m., Maranzano was visited by a group of men dressed in suits and carrying a subpoena.
So they're posing as federal agents to examine his books. That's how they got in.
They appeared to be non-Italian, so Maranzano dropped his guard. It wasn't suspicious.
Maranzano stood up behind his desk to greet the visitors.
They showed him a phony, of course, a subpoena to examine his
Oh,
books,
well,
which were all doctored up.
Suddenly, the men pulled out guns.
Before anyone knew what had happened, they had lined everybody up, their faces to the wall.
Then, one hitman pinned Maranzano's arm behind his back, while another stabbed the boss repeatedly. Maranzano managed to break free,
He started to reach for a gun that was hidden in his drawer.
but before he could grab it, a hitman drew his own weapon and fired 4 bullets. The hitman fled, leaving Maranzano's employees alive. But the boss was dead, with 4 gunshot wounds, a slashed throat, and 6 stab wounds. No one was ever convicted of killing Salvatore Maranzano, but there was no doubt in the mob world that Luciano planned the hit. And he quickly became one of the leaders in the criminal underworld. With the old school mafia bosses out of the picture, Lucky Luciano revolutionized the way the New York mob was run.
Luciano immediately convened a meeting and said, look, we're not going to have a capo to the company. We're going to have a commission.
Luciano proposed that the mobsters share the New York territories. There was enough money to go around for everyone. It was the beginning of the modern New York mafia.
Organized crime was born.
But it could not have taken place without killing Joe Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano.
A few years later, one ruthless, independent mobster would put the new commission to the test and see just how far its members would go to maintain peace. New York City, the gateway to America, where cultures merge and sometimes clash. In the 1950s, the streets of New York were a battleground in a war between 2 top mobsters. But when Joe the Boss Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano were rooked out, mobster Lucky Luciano rose to the top, and modern organized crime was born.
Luciano was a criminal genius. He created this whole concept of how the mafia would survive and prosper. One of the ideas, of course, was the commission that would resolve any kind of disputes.
With Lucky's commission in place, the Italian mob was more prosperous than ever, so much so that even a non-Italian was allowed to share in the profits. But when he didn't obey one of the commission's rules, he paid for it with his life. Monster Dutch Schultz had a violent temper. He built a criminal enterprise using cold-blooded tactics that were shocking, even by mob standards.
There's no other way to describe Dutch Schultz except as a psychopath. When Dutch Schultz wanted something, he just took it. He wasn't a person that you want to mess with.
Like other gangsters, Dutch built his empire by profiting from Prohibition. Known as the beer baron of the Bronx, Dutch continued to make a fortune even after Prohibition ended in 1933.
There was tremendous potential in Harlem to make money from this numbers racket, which is a kind of a lottery. He moved quickly into it and became the envy of all the other gangsters because he recognized the opportunity.
But Dutch's wealth and underworld status also attracted unwanted attention from law enforcement, which was using new tactics to bring down the mob.
Instead of trying to go after them because of breaking the prohibition laws, they decided to go after them for not reporting illegal income.
Among those going after mobsters was prosecutor Thomas Dewey, appointed by Governor Herbert Lehman to investigate organized crime. Dewey was determined to bring down the Dutchman.
The underworld is afraid for the first time in 20 years.
Thomas E. Dewey, a no-nonsense, really honest prosecutor, decided his first target would be Dutch Schultz. He was number 1 in Dewey's hit parade.
Knowing Dewey wouldn't stop until the mobster was in jail, Schultz wanted to take action.
Dutch Schultz said, I know how to solve the Dewey problem. I killed Tom Dewey.
But most commission members thought the plan was a very bad idea.
Luciano said, are you out of your mind? We do not kill prosecutors.
Killing Tom Dewey would be very bad for business. Very bad. Meaning, forget it. I mean, Dewey was one of the most popular men in New York State. They were sent out the National Guard. Believe me.
The Dutchman was too stubborn to listen. According to some, he told the commission he was going to kill Thomas Dewey, with or without its approval.
There's a lot of stories going around, but what happened next? One report said that he stormed out of the meeting and he said he was going to kill Dewey within 48 hours.
Luciano and the commission weren't about to let Dutch defy its decision.
It was a race against time as to who would be gotten rid of first, Schultz or Dewey.
October 23rd, 1935, Newark, New Jersey, 10:15 p.m.
Dutch Schultz and 3 of his top lieutenants, Dave Landau, Lou Rosencrantz, his second in command, and his financial wizard, Otto Abadaba Herman, were in the Palace Chop House in Newark, New Jersey.
Schultz got up to use the men's room, leaving his fellow mobsters and bodyguards in the Chop House barroom. Suddenly, 3 gunmen burst into the restaurant, including notorious hitman Charles the Bug Workman.
Charlie the Bug just strolled right into this narrow bar. He flipped open the bedroom door, saw a guy all dressed up.
The Bug fired 2 shots. One tore through Schultz's chest. Then, the hitman stormed back into the dining room.
A raging gun battle erupted. The workmen started blasting. The 2 bodyguards started blasting at him. He downed both of them.
As the gunmen fled, Dutch Schultz staggered out of the men's room to a table, where he collapsed face down. He survived the shooting, lingering semi-conscious in a hospital for a day before dying from his injuries. By killing Dutch, the commission had spared Dewey's life, but Dewey didn't think he owed the mafia anything. The prosecutor continued his crusade to eradicate the mob in New York City. He won scores of convictions, and in 1946, saw to it that Lucky Luciano, an illegal immigrant, was deported back to Italy. Dutch Schultz learned his lesson the hard way. Never underestimate the power of the commission.
Nobody could mess with the commission, and nobody could mess with the Italian mafia, certainly not in New York.
That same kind of warning could be found halfway across the country. In Chicago, where mobster Al Capone made a big name for himself. Capone chose the most romantic day of the year to send a special greeting to his arch enemy, Bugs Moran.
Chicago was not big enough for both Al Capone and Bugs Moran. The only way to stop the bloodshed was for one of the gangs to be destroyed.
You're way shorter than I thought you'd be. There's a shirtless selfie of me by the dumbbells. Here I am to do air drumming, a competitive air drummer.
Oh, wow.
By the way, I forgot my wallet at home, so sugar mama.
Will you excuse me?
a Hyundai Tucson with advanced tech and safety features. There's joy in every journey. Lease the Tucson for only $269 a month, or get up to $2,000 bonus cash. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today.
In the 1930s in New York, the hits on three crime bosses, Joe Massacre, Salvatore Maranzano, and Dutch Schultz, proved that even the most powerful mobster could meet his end in a hail of bullets. In Chicago, notorious gangster Al Capone had wanted to teach a similar lesson to his rival, Bugs Moran. But the events of one chilly February morning showed that Capone had gone too far. Al Scarface Capone rose to power during the 1920s. Prohibition fueled a lucrative bootlegging industry and a violent gang war.
The Chicago Beer Wars took an estimated 600 to 800 gangster lives.
As leader of Chicago's ultra-violent South Side gang, Capone used every means to expand his criminal empire into North Side territory, controlled by Bugs Moran. Moran fought back hard. His gang tried to take out Capone on nearly a dozen occasions, but failed every time.
By 1929, the personal and professional rivalry was at a really poisonous level. There could never be a peace between Al Capone and Bugs Moran.
Capone had had enough. He decided to end the war once and for all.
Capone said, hey, no more. None of this going. Today, one of your guys, tomorrow, one of my guys. We're going to get them all in one place, at one time.
Capone had realized the only way to deal with the question of Bugs Moran was murder.
After months of planning, the Capone gang developed what they thought was the perfect strategy to eliminate Bugs Moran and his top henchmen and take over the North Side. February 14th, 1929, Valentine's Day, 10:30 a.m. Bugs Moran and his bodyguard hurried through the Chicago streets, already behind schedule for a meeting with his gang.
Moran was late for his own scheduled execution that morning because he'd stopped for a haircut at the Parkway Hotel barbershop.
6 of his men were gathered at a nondescript building at 2122 North Clark Street. The Moran crew was waiting for their leader to arrive so they could plan their next attack on Capone. As Moran's 6 men drank coffee, smoked, and talked, they had no idea that Capone's men were staking out the building. Then, a 7th man arrived at the garage door.
2 sets of lookouts had their eyes on this location at 2122 North Clark Street. They were watching for Bugs Moran. Between 10:15 and 10:30, they saw a man, medium height, stocky build, wearing a brown overcoat and green olive hat, go in the garage. Thinking that it was Bugs Moran, they made a phone call.
But the phone call was premature.
In reality, it was Al Weinshank, who bore a striking resemblance to Bugs Moran. In the excitement of the moment, they made a very quick decision and said, yes, Bugs was here.
Just after 10:30 a.m., men dressed in police uniforms arrived at the garage and walked into the building.
We really don't know what happened. All we know is that the 7 men that were associated with the Bugs Moran gang were lined up against the wall.
Shot doesn't quite describe it. Since they were mowed down with machine guns, they were literally shot to pieces.
10:45 a.m. Bugs finally arrived at his headquarters, but he and his bodyguard knew something was wrong.
Coming out were 2 uniformed police officers, herding men in plain clothes, who had their hands raised.
If anybody was looking, it looked like just a typical kind of arrest.
Moran had no idea what had really happened. Up to that point, no one in Chicago could have foreseen such a travesty taking place.
When Moran didn't recognize the men being arrested, He didn't stick around to ask any questions. Moran would later learn that 7 of his men had been slaughtered. No one was ever arrested in connection with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
One of the great mysteries of organized crime to this day is who were the shooters in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Nobody really knows for sure.
But if the St. Valentine's Day Massacre remained an unsolved mystery, in the aftermath, a clear verdict was reached on Al Capone's career. The massacre was a colossal mistake. Even in Chicago, where gang violence had become part of daily life, the killings galvanized the public.
The universal response to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre was revulsion. Although there had been gangland murders and shootings before, never before had there been such a messy, showy, spectacular example of violence.
In the months that followed, public outrage caused the federal government to put all of its weight behind bringing Al Capone down.
It sparked a national reaction. And Herbert Hoover had just entered office as President of the United States and said, we got to do something about it.
Eventually, the feds did do something about it, convicting Capone on tax evasion charges and sending him to federal prison in 1931. Al Capone never returned to Chicago. He died in 1947 of syphilis. In the years that followed, Chicago mobsters took care to keep a low profile. They had learned that publicity was bad for business. But one mobster, Sam Giancana, ignored lessons from the past and paid the ultimate price.
There's a good bet that he was killed for what he knew and what he might say.
In New York City, mob hits during the 1930s revolutionized organized crime, leading to the formation of the modern-day mafia. In Chicago, Al Capone's criminal empire was called the Outfit, and he ran it with an iron fist. But the brutality of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre caused such a public outrage, it demanded the attention of the federal government. Justice was served when Al Capone was sent to prison. While Capone's successors tried not to make the same mistakes, they did live to regret making Sam Giancana a top mobster. By the early 1950s, the Chicago outfit was controlled by Tony Joe Sicardo. He was working to rebuild the mob in the wake of Capone's departure and the repeal of Prohibition. A rising star was helping Accardo establish the Chicago outfit as a mob powerhouse. His name was Sam Giancana.
Giancana was a guy who right from the first moment was noticed by Tony Accardo. He was vicious, he was ruthless, he was crazy, and he was an absolute stone-cold killer.
But it was Giancana's reputation as a moneymaker that catapulted him to power. Giancana, a.k.a. Momo, helped Accardo take control of more rackets, including prostitution, loan sharking, and counterfeiting. When Accardo expanded into Las Vegas gambling, it was Giancana who oversaw the outfit's interests.
Of course, this really made Giancana an important man within the outfit. He was able to bring in the money and increase the profits to a much higher level than it was before.
By 1957, the outfit was a smooth-running criminal empire. But mob boss Tony Accardo had come under repeated scrutiny of the federal government and was ready to make a change. He decided to stay in charge behind the scenes, handing over day-to-day operations to his protege, Sam Giancana.
Tony Accardo was the guy who brought him along and said, look, this is the guy to take over the outfit.
Accardo would come to regret his decision.
Accardo's faith in Giancana was not quite repaid. For one thing, Giancana had a violent temper, and when that happened, he didn't think very clearly.
But what most angered Ricardo was Momo's newfound passion for the spotlight.
Sam Giancana was always highly visible. Carter was not. Carter was a family man. Took a low profile. Giancana would appear with Phyllis McGuire, the noted singer. He would appear with Sinatra, which didn't do him or Sinatra any good.
Ricardo grew especially angry when Giancana picked public fights with the federal government.
Giancana decided to sue the FBI because he claimed they were following him too closely. That's not the kind of publicity Tony Accardo wanted. It's not the kind of thing that organized crime leaders are supposed to do.
The outfit was none too pleased by all the unwanted publicity. Accardo was getting fed up with Sam Giancana.
He called a lot of attention to organized crime when he should have kept a low profile.
Tony Accardo decided a transfer was in order. He sent Giancana to Mexico to set up new gambling operations. But Accardo and other outfit leaders became enraged when Momo refused to send any gambling profits back to Chicago.
He was making a lot of money from it. And Tony Accardo said, excuse me, Momo, where's my cut? Oh, said Momo, you don't get a cut. I don't. Why? Well, because that's outside the rules. That was something extra, and besides, it's not in the United States. It's something separate.
When Giancana finally returned to the U.S. in 1974, he wanted his old job back as head of the outfit. Tony Accardo wasn't about to let that happen. Making matters worse, in 1975, Giancana was subpoenaed to testify before a Senate committee investigating CIA plots to kill Fidel Castro. The committee believed Chicago mobsters had been involved as potential hitmen. Accardo began to worry that Giancana might talk to investigators.
Most people believe that it's not a coincidence that on the night before he was going to have a meeting with investigators from the Senate committee that was looking into the CIA, he met his fate.
June 19th, 1975. Oak Park, Illinois, 10:30 p.m.
Giancana was in the basement of his house cooking roof snack, sausage and peppers, is what reportedly he was cooking.
What happened next remains a mystery. All that's known for sure is that as he stood cooking at the stove, Sam Giancana was shot in the back of the head.
Then, for good measure, while Giancana was lying on the floor, shot him in the neck 6 more times.
He was hit in the mouth and the neck. Another mafia sign that he might have been a squealer. He was going to say things to embarrass the mafia. Secrets the mafia did not want known.
No one was ever arrested for the murder.
Who shot Giancana? No one will ever know. It was somebody you knew very well, because A, he let him in, and B, he turned his back on him. In Giancana's world, you don't turn your back on somebody you don't trust.
There were plenty of people who wanted Giancana dead, but only one man could have sanctioned the hit.
Tony Accardo sent out a very powerful message. You don't mess with me. You don't hold back money from me. And again, no one man is greater or more powerful or above the organization.
While Giancana was silenced for what he might say, Bugsy Siegel found himself on the wrong end of mob justice for breaking a cardinal rule. Never rob the mob.
I went to West Point with Dave McCormick. Dave McCormick embodies the values of duty, honor, and country that are instilled in us at West Point. He's a selfless leader, a workhorse, and he always puts his country first. What America needs is leadership, and that's Dave McCormick.
Whopper Juniors for just $5 at Burger King.
In the 1930s and 40s, mob power in America was concentrated in Chicago and New York. In Los Angeles, organized crime was so small-time, investigators called it the Mickey Mouse Mob. But as the Mafia's influence began to move west, so did the hits. The case of Benjamin Bugsy Siegel demonstrated that east or west, some rules never change.
Benjamin, better known as Bugsy Siegel, was a character that even Hollywood couldn't make up.
Bugsy rose in the ranks of the New York mob in the 1930s as the right-hand man to legendary mobster Meyer Lansky. Bugsy had his hand in plenty of different rackets: bootlegging, hijacking, labor racketeering, and murder.
Ben Siegel was a type of a guy who was very polite, very well spoken, but if you called him Bugsy, you would see the real mad dog come out of him, a real crazed maniac. Ben Siegel was a stone-cold killer.
In 1936, Lucky Luciano decided to give Bugsy the opportunity of a lifetime.
Luciano saw Hollywood as a very ripe area for plucking, and he sent Bugsy out there with the instructions, bring in some more dough.
When Bugsy arrived in Hollywood, he reconnected with a childhood friend. Actor George Raft was best known for playing a gangster on screen, and was happy to introduce this handsome, real-life gangster around town.
George Raft was his entree into Hollywood society. Hollywood society was quite taken with Ben Siegel. It was a case of what you would call mobster chic.
Bugsy hit the ground running. It wasn't long before he forced his way into gambling and labor rackets, as he enjoyed the Hollywood social scene.
The Hollywood film crowd exudes glamour and power. So did Siegel. The difference being that his power came from the broken bones and blood of the rackets.
Bugsy was so successful in Los Angeles that the New York Mafia agreed to fund his personal vision. He wanted to take gambling, the mob's most lucrative illegal enterprise, to a place where it was legal, Las Vegas.
He saw a vision that here was like a fabulous opportunity, legalized gambling, to build an American equivalent to the gambling pleasure palaces of Monte Carlo.
Bugsy's new casino would be called the Flamingo. It would be the most spectacular gambling spot Vegas had ever seen. But Siegel quickly found himself in over his head.
Everything went wrong with the building. Labor troubles, delays in construction, delays in getting the material. It became a money pit.
Luciano only approved $1 million to build the Flamingo, and the wound up at the end, it cost over $6 million.
The casino finally opened in 1947, and soon after, the New York mob got suspicious. The casino wasn't making a profit.
If there's one thing a casino should do, it's not lose money. It's not there to lose money. The house always has the edge.
It turned out that not only was Bugsy a bad businessman, he was skimming the profits.
Bugsy Siegel found all that cash irresistible. He took the position, look, if a little bit of it sticks to my fingers for my retirement in my old age, come on, you know, what's wrong with that? They're not going to miss it.
Once he started taking money from the mob, Bugsy Siegel had sealed his fate.
Listen, in the underworld, this is everything. Remember that. This comes before your family, before anything. This. You understand?
June 20th, 1947, Beverly Hills, California, 10:45 p.m. Bugsy was relaxing at the home of his girlfriend, Virginia Hill, while she was out of town.
It's very interesting that he was sitting in her living room on one night that she wasn't there. Many people think that she knew what was going to happen, that she left. It wasn't accidental.
Bugsy had just returned from a late-night dinner with Virginia's brother and his girlfriend. The couple went upstairs, while Siegel and a monster friend, Alan Smiley, sat in the living room.
Suddenly, from outside the window, he was hit by a fusillade of bullets.
Several of the shots hit Siegel in the head. A few more shots were peppered around. The photograph of Ben Siegel sitting in his chair, his face shot up, is an icon in underworld legend and lore. Quite a graphic photo finish for Siegel.
Bugsy had discovered a gold mine that would later enrich thousands of mafioso. And yet his reward for doing all that was 9 bullets.
Although no one was convicted of the murder, New York hitman Frankie Cargo is the one most often suspected of carrying it out. Bugsy Siegel had broken a cardinal mob rule and paid for it with his life. But even when a top mobster makes the rules, he's taking a chance. New York mobster Big Paul Castellano found that out the hard way. In the late 1940s, in Las Vegas, Bugsy Siegel violated the most fundamental rule of organized crime: never rob the mob. After top mobsters suspected he was skimming profits from gambling operations, Bugsy was rubbed out. In New York, it was a different kind of money grab that sealed the fate of Gambino family crime boss, Paul Castellano. After he put the squeeze on his capos, one of them decided to take matters into his own hands. Paul Castellano ascended to power in an unusual way. In 1976, when Godfather Carlo Gambino was in failing health, he broke with tradition. Instead of naming his number 2 man, Neil Della Croce, as the next head of the family, Gambino chose his brother-in-law, Paul Castellano.
Neil Della Croce, being a good soldier himself, went along. Had he made trouble, it could have been an explosive gang war that could have split the family.
Castellano was now in charge of the largest criminal organization in the country, with 300 soldiers and 1,500 associates. The Gambino crime family was